Oh my gosh, after 2 years, we finally seen a new MCU film.
Yeah.
Black Widow drops in theaters tonight.
Yeah, well, it dropped last night for most of America.
Well, I mean, you know what I mean. The official theatrical
Yeah.
release is today, so... You know.
You're both wrong.
Why is that?
What?
Like, Black Widow dropped like 3 years ago.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, and in the scene on Vormir in Endgame, so they could get the Soul Stone. You remember that?
That's just terrible, BB Nate.
Wow.
That's really dark.
It's a little messed up.
You know, and they didn't say that Black Widow will return after this movie as well.
No, they didn't say that. Let's just start the show after these ads specifically chosen for you by specially trained pigs living a few miles outside of St. Petersburg. This is Tatooine Sons.
A cheer to Star Wars, Marvel, DC, and Power Rangers fans.
No, there's no Power.
I don't
There's
actually.
no Power Ranger
I
fans
don't. Yeah, not anymore.
Yeah, not with those new movies.
I've always thought, how do like franchises that big die? I guess this is the answer.
You have no idea. You have no idea how big that franchise, or idea how big that franchise was. But yeah.
Well, anyway, thanks for tuning in. If you want to get some really cool Tatooine Sons merch, or even Marvel, Star Wars, and DC stuff,
Yeah, we got some new Black Widow shirts up there.
Are
even
on
an
there.
Elena shirt.
Ooh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead and
Red
check out.
Guardian.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway,
the Russian Captain America, basically.
Are we going to mention the pigs?
No, we don't have any shirts.
No pig shirts. But if you want to get any of that, just not pig shirts, go to our TeePublic page. The link is in the show notes down below. What's cool is every purchase you make goes to help a child living in poverty through One Child. 100% of the proceeds goes to help a child living in need. So you get a really cool piece of pop culture merch, and you get to help a kid at the same time. So make sure you use our link in the show notes.
It's true. All of it.
What is the name of the porg on the Millennium Falcon?
Force is strong in my family.
What do you think his name is? It's a big moment.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Maybe Turbis?
Do or do not. There is no try.
Turbis? Pablo, if you're listening to this live stream, that porg's name is now Turbis. It's a good Star Wars name.
We're not done yet.
These guys recorded an awesome podcast called Tatooine Sons. Everybody was
We all did.
Probably had a little too much.
I did have a lot of popcorn last
You
night.
always have.
But it was cool to look behind us and see a full theater at Black
Yeah,
Widow.
that was really encouraging.
Just about every seat was
Filled.
filled.
Yeah, it was great.
First time since we've gone back to the movies since COVID that we've seen something
it filled.
like that.
Yeah, it was really encouraging.
That's pretty awesome. Well, welcome to Tatooine Sons, a pop culture podcast. We believe that pop culture is the mythology of this generation, that there is a story. It is written on our souls. These myths speak to that story. Even if Cam Ray doesn't like that. We'll talk about that in a minute. But that's why we talk about Star Wars, Marvel, DC, Lord of the Rings, and a bunch of other things. Not the Power Rangers.
No.
That's not on our list of fandom.
Nope.
I am David. I'm the dad. I'm joined by a couple of other really amazing sons. Sam.
Hi.
Welcome. How's it going?
I'm good.
Good. And your topic this week is going to be Loki.
As always.
As always. But there's a lot to talk about.
There's a lot to unpack. Plenty of little nuggets of MCU stuff or Marvel stuff. It's literally littered.
Literally littered, yeah. And Nathan, you're we threw a curveball at you this week. You were going to do the next part of the Batman Who Laughs, right? But then this certain movie came out. We figured we probably should talk about.
Yeah, we probably should. So we're going to be talking about some Black Widow.
Yeah.
It was exciting. It was a lot of fun going to the theaters last night. So we're going to be talking about that great MCU movie.
Yeah, and in our planning for this episode, I pushed the Bad Batch episode or conversation to the last segment in the show because I figured, it's just another Bad Batch episode and those are fun, but nothing really.
Yeah, nothing happened
except for the fact that one of our favorite characters in all the Star Wars animation was brought into this entire episode, and so we're gonna have a lot of fun talking about the Bad Batch this week. But did you guys get a chance to really watch that Star Wars Visions trailer?
I didn't. No,
a little.
I watched it a little bit. Yeah, I watched a little bit.
We were watching when it came out, and it just. I'm just gonna be honest with you. It looks weird.
Yeah, well, all anime looks weird.
I have to show you guys the Batman Gotham Knight shorts because those might change your mind on what this is going to be because it looks exactly like it. So,
and did you like those shorts?
Oh, I absolutely love
Batman.
It happens, and it takes place in the Dark Knight universe between Batman Begins and Dark Knight. So,
all right, that means
the first one and the second one.
Yeah, okay, kind of like the Animatrix.
Yes, a lot like the
Animatrix. Matrix 2 and Matrix 3.
It was made by Warner Brothers when they were trying to make that a thing.
Okay,
but it wasn't. It never really
Animatrix works. So, right. Well, that's awesome. Maybe Nate, you've been reading the Invincible Compendium Volume 1.
Yes.
How many pages is this?
It's almost 1,100.
And you're about
halfway.
And you got it
yesterday, kind of.
Is it as good as it is, or it's just something you want to get through?
No, it is as good as people have made it out to be, and it's fantastic. It really is. I love the stories, and I won't say too much though because someone in here decided.
I'm working on it. All right, I want to read it, but I'm getting there.
You know, it's funny because we found one of your first YouTube videos that when we were trying to make Tatooine Sons a YouTube show back before the podcast was started, and it was BB Nate breaking down a Star Wars comic, and it was so good. I want you to do that again, but just general comics. Will you do that someday?
Yeah, of course.
We'll get that up and running on that. We have to address something though that I would rather not have to address. You know, a few months back when the Gina Carano stuff happened, we were forced to take a kind of have a conversation that we didn't want to have on the show.
We got to get down to business
about
sometimes.
Gina Carano. We're having to do that again this week. But this week it's about somebody that's like trying to steal our brand, and they're criticizing us. We thought this person was our friend.
Yeah.
Cam Ray, who we had a contest a few months back, like a year ago or so, and he won Baby Yoda and gave it to his kid. And we've talked about, Cam Ray gave us a review a couple of weeks ago. We invited him to hang out with us last night at Black Widow. He did. And then we found out we're leaving the theater. He left before we did. And we were walking out of the theater, and there he is recording a video talking about how, there's some Star Wars podcasts that have sold out and become pop culture and made fun of us. Basically, he called us out, talking about, mythology. And
he didn't say our name specifically, but it was pretty clear who he was talking about.
It was obvious. And we came up behind him while he was recording this. And honestly, I really didn't even know how to react to it. Then I found out that he's stolen our logo and basically stolen our name.
Pretty much.
He's calling himself Tatooine Sons. And so, we've got, our lawyer on Twitter, Maya Butthurt, who is, our lawyer that's reaching out to his lawyers. I don't even know his lawyer's name. Trying to settle this thing. But, if you're not following this saga on Twitter, it's pretty ugly. So I apologize about all that. All right. If you think that this is serious, please know that it's not. All right. Okay. But have fun with that on Twitter. Okay. Nate, you're going to start this show off tonight. So,
Marvel is finally back to the movies. Woo!
All right.
There you go, Dad.
Black Widow came out in theaters and on Disney Plus this week. Actually, Disney Plus did release it last night.
They did. Okay.
They did for the Thursday night preview night, and we're here to talk all about it. And let's just get to it.
Have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?
Yeah, I can fly.
I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
The people in this room, which one is A, wearing a spangly outfit, and B, not of use?
There's only one God, man. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't dress like that.
Batman has no limits.
Yeah, I was about to say it was really cool to get a comic. I'm weirded out though because it was comic 1 of 2. I'm not even sure how you get the second one and why they didn't give you the second one before the movie came out.
I bet you it's in comic stores. It's to get people to go to the comic store and pay some money for them.
I guess, but
Maybe it is. I don't know. We'll have to find out.
But
maybe we have to go back today.
Yeah, maybe we do have to go back today. But first reactions to the movie, initial thoughts. What did you think?
Oh, I thought
non-spoiler.
I thought it was a lot of fun. It was a really fun Marvel movie. I mean, everybody said this. It's not necessarily. I mean, it comes across as like a complaint, but it does feel like it came out a few years too late. But all that said, it was such a fun MCU movie. It was really good. Did a lot for the character. I mean, you can't complain. It was a great Marvel movie.
Yeah, I loved getting questions answered.
Yes.
About Natasha and
Budapest.
And the Red Room and her family. I thought it was a lot of fun. I think that it was the Marvel Universe's version of Bourne.
Yeah.
It felt a lot like that, especially some of the opening sequences, had very car chases, just hand-to-hand combat.
The improvised weapon, hand-to-hand
weapons
stuff.
and that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Felt a lot like it. I think that we'll probably end up seeing it again this weekend because we've got A-lists or stubs, so we can go in and
or let's just go see F9 again.
No, we'll see this one again this weekend. I'm curious to see if it holds up on a second viewing.
Yeah.
I'm worried that it's going to drop into that mid-tier of MCU movies. Not because it's not a good movie, but because of what you just said. It came out at a point of time where we already know the story.
Yeah, it feels kind of almost unimportant at this point.
Yeah, it was a good movie. It was interesting.
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly. But let's get to the meat of it. We're not going to go scene by scene breaking it down. We're going to go by big moments, but in chronological order. Because
so are we going to go scene by scene then?
No, we're not going scene by scene.
Oh,
big scene by scene.
Big scene by scene. Yes, big scene by scene. We're starting in Ohio, which was weird.
Yeah, I liked that whole sequence. Like, I thought it was interesting. Go ahead. I don't want to.
There was one thing that made me think, because I mean, in the prelude comic we got, they said she grew up in Russia. And then they go to Ohio.
Yeah, so here's the way that this works from what I understand. It's kind of easy to get this lost in all of the things that are happening in those opening sequences. But it's made clear that Natasha, even though she's only like 10 or 11, maybe 12 years old.
I think she's 11, yeah.
She was only there for 3 years.
She remembers Russia.
Right.
Back when Alexei and Melina, Alexei and Melina are recruited into this idea, which I'm sure you'll talk about. All of that happened when Natasha was just a little girl, but Natasha remembers growing up in Russia, in the Soviet Union, all of that. Elena doesn't, but that's where
she was only like 3 years old, I think, when
she was a lot
Russia.
younger. Yeah.
But we get this really cool airplane scene. That's totally suspended all realism there for a second, but it was really cool. And then we go to something that's never happened in a Marvel movie before. We get a credits kind of James Bond.
That's all we're going to talk about, the entire opening sequence?
There wasn't much else.
Was there?
Well, I mean, I like how it was Marvel's version of the like Russian spy thing that happened here in America. You know, I like how they played with that.
Yeah, this idea, this families that became, like completely entrenched in society and pretended to be Americans and had American or even sometimes Russian immigrants. They did that, all of that. And that happened in the real world at this very time.
Yeah.
And I love how they're tying in real world history with MCU history, storyline and bringing in Natasha on that.
Meshing it all together.
It was an intense opening sequence.
It was very intense.
One thing about this movie is it started and it felt like it didn't stop at all. It just kept going. Even we went and saw it with Savannah. I was talking with her about it. She said even the conversations were tense. Like there weren't like conversations that were just there to fill in the gap. Like everything had emotional like meaning behind it,
except
and
for
drove
the
something.
Best scene.
No, because that
it bonded them.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything had meaning, it felt like.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were talking about how the first time in the MCU history,
we get like this James Bond-esque kind of credits thing at the beginning, which has never happened in the MCU before.
That's just the stuff that they usually put right at the end of the movie, and then you get to the end of that, and sometimes they'll insert an mid-credits.
Mid-credits.
Then have the main credits, and then have the post-credits.
Exactly.
Right.
That whole opening sequence was then moved to the beginning of the movie.
Exactly.
With that. But that whole opening sequence was critical to the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked how it wasn't just a filler. Like it was explaining what was happening to Natasha as like she was going through her training in the Red Room and stuff. So it was neat.
Yeah, we kind of see it's kind of just like a way to put her childhood into a little bit of a sequence.
Right. And it's not like a Bond intro where it's
all foreshadowing for what's coming in the movie.
It's like actually beneficial. Like you need to watch it to know what's going on and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it was an interesting decision. I liked it.
Yes, I really liked it too. One of my favorite parts of it was the whole them shooting the holidays in one day, which they mentioned later on in the movie. That was a really cool part.
Yeah, I don't think we can go past that opening credits sequence without talking about sort of that heavy theme that was in it, which is, it's about human trafficking. Mm-hmm. It's about sex trafficking. Basically, what they tell us in the end of that Ohio sequence is they arrive in Cuba and Natasha and Elena are put back into the system with, what's the guy's name? The bad guy?
Drakov, I think.
Drakov. I always want to call him Draco. And that's like Rocky IV or something.
I kept looking up who the villain was because I keep forgetting his name, but it's just Taskmaster that comes up. Nobody's mentioning who the actual villain is.
That's because it's a spoiler.
It's a huge spoiler.
But
good point.
But he basically sends Natasha, and we see this in that opening credits sequence. Mm-hmm. Natasha and Yelena are put into the Red Room, but it's along with a bunch of other girls that have been kidnapped or taken through human trafficking with it. And that's a theme that runs throughout the entire movie. It goes all the way to the end where Drakov, he essentially says women have no value. There's too many of they're a resource we have too much of, and they're only good for being used like this. And this mindset of like the human trafficking, sex trafficking world with it. And I just honestly did not expect for them to go there.
No, but
in this film,
they did it in such a way to where it wasn't like overt. But it's there enough to where we can have a conversation about it. And they handled it in a good way, I feel like. Just like how even the new TV shows are handling certain concepts like that.
Oh, yeah.
Especially
with Black Captain America, Isaiah Bradley. Black Falcon, they were joking about that. They made those jokes, but the reason they did that was to bring in some pretty heavy racial things into that storyline, along with nationalism versus globalism in that. You deal with grief in WandaVision and loss in that. In Loki,
you deal with purpose. Who you are.
Yeah, I think purpose. I think that's it. Like, can you change your own destiny?
Yeah.
With it, is your purpose already set before you, or can you? It's interesting, and they're doing that in this, and that's what I love so much about these stories is they allow us to address those issues and create a kind of a safe space to talk about it.
Yes. So let's go through reunions now, because that was all this movie, and family. Gotta put that in there because of how it is. But
family.
we get family. We get Yelena and Natasha's reunion first with an amazing fight scene that did closely resemble the fight scene in the apartment of Bourne in the first movie.
I got that vibe. I was waiting for one of them to pick up a pen.
Did you also notice though that there's this theme of mirroring throughout the entire movie? It is. They're mirroring each other in this sequence.
Taskmaster is literally a mirror.
Is a mirror of everybody he sees. We learn that the widows are built upon generation from generation to generation. They're learning from, they're trained in the techniques of the previous generation. And then we see that sequence. I know that we're jumping ahead, but we see that sequence where they're all kind of moving together in that training sequence, exactly in form, kind of like Natasha. With it, you have Yelena mocking and kind of making fun of Natasha's poses. I'm sure that would come up at some point, but then she tries it. So this idea of mirroring, I think when I go back and watch it again, I think that's one thing that I want to really focus in on that.
So we get that fight scene, and I feel like it's a really great way to introduce the character of Yelena as an equal to Black Widow.
Yeah, I mean,
we see that even though Black Widow's an Avenger, I mean, she's as good as Black Widow. And so, if not better in some cases. And so, I think it was a really great way of them to just have that discussion and everything. Are you dying over there?
Oh, I'll be all right.
So what did y'all think of Yelena as a character in this throughout this whole movie, since we're not going scene by scene?
Yeah. No, I liked the sequence, how you said, like, it was a cool way to bring in the sibling feud. Like, you know how siblings fight? Well, when you have two super soldier siblings, they're going to fight a little bit different.
Yeah, when they're both super soldiers, they're going to fight like super soldiers.
Right, and they kick the crap out of each other, and it was awesome.
Even though they're not technically
super soldiers.
But, yeah.
Well, they're super spies, basically.
Super duper spies.
Right. Super spy. Anyway, no, they had a really cool relationship, and I think Yelena is a really good addition to the MCU. I think she has the humor almost that's necessary to be in the MCU. It feels like every character's got to have some like whimsy to them, but you're right. She's an equal with Black Widow. Now that Black Widow's gone, they had to have a character to somewhat replace her, but still be unique in and of themselves. And I think Yelena is a good candidate for that.
The highlight of the entire film is the relationship between Natasha and Yelena.
Absolutely.
With this. And Yelena's character is as skilled as Natasha in every way, shape, and form, but she is the younger sibling. She's the rival. She wants to one up her older sibling. She doesn't want to be told what to do by Natasha. You're such a mom, that kind of stuff. And at the same time, we see the brokenness in Yelena, because of what happens in that opening sequence and being left by her family and the whole story. We understand Natasha better because of Yelena, both in those opening sequences, and then in the family sequences, later on. And I'm sorry, I know the family meme is finding its way into this.
I was waiting for Dom to show up.
Yeah, exactly. But that I loved her character. I cannot wait to see what they're going to do with her, because there's obviously something coming in the future.
And we get a few conversations later. Of course, we get the vest conversation, which was fantastic and worried me very much, because we see Black Widow wearing that same vest in Infinity War. So a lot of people were wondering if Yelena died, and she took the vest as a kind of
a memento.
Because that vest, you see that in some of the trailers and stuff. So you know that's Yelena's vest.
You do.
So the concern is that Yelena was going to die.
Exactly. And then Black Widow would have that as a memento of her sister.
Finn taking Poe's jacket.
And I was a little worried there throughout the whole movie, and yet at the end she just gives it to her, which I was fine with, because her character is fantastic. But let's just not, jump around it with Yelena. Let's just get to the post-credits.
We have to talk about the post-credits scene?
We do.
Okay.
We get Yelena going to the grave of Natasha, which was a super...
Natasha dies?
Yeah.
What? In this movie?
No.
Oh, okay.
In Infinity War. No, Endgame, sorry. Again, timelines are really weird right now.
It is.
Stupid Loki. But we get Yelena kind of paying her respects, and then we get
Contessa Valentina, what was her name?
Allegra
de la Fontaine.
I'm not saying that. I'm calling her Val no matter what she says, because that's just way too long to say. We get her blowing her nose quite loudly, and just shows up out of nowhere.
Making fun of Midwest allergies. So this is probably Ohio again, you realize.
And I loved the reference of the whole tree where...
Yeah.
Right, I gotta stop though. Is there a body in this grave?
Probably not.
You can't have a body in this grave.
Unless they went to
Vormir and found her body.
It would be a little weird, a bit excessive.
I think that they just, had a bodiless burial.
Yeah. Okay.
But we get Val there giving...
Yeah, just out of the blue.
Giving Elena her next target, which apparently she's been working for Val for at least some time, and she wants a raise.
Well, again, we got to remember that this process is like 5-6 years after the end of Black Widow, because Black Widow takes place at the end of Civil War. Then you have Infinity War, and then you have the 5-year period of the blip, and then you have Endgame, and this is after that. So we're 5-6 years after the end of Black Widow is when the end credit scene takes place. And as we saw in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, life, I'm going to make the assumption that Yelena wasn't blipped. through this process, because she's got an experience with Val. She's been working with Val. I think that at this point, there's a history there, and that probably developed during the blip. And as we saw with Sharon Carter, you had to take things, things had to change at that point. Elena has a very specific skill set.
Yeah.
She's an assassin at this point. We don't really know for sure what Val is, or who she is, but at this point, I think that we can assume that relationship had begun long before this.
Yeah, and we get her kind of giving her next target, which is the person who killed Natasha. It's Red Skull. No, it's Clint, which was surprising. I didn't expect that as a target, but I think that ties directly into the Hawkeye show we will be seeing. And nothing much else happened for the post-credit scene. I don't think really anything else.
Well, I was wondering if Natasha was going to shut up, because there's this sequence in here where they're whistling back at each other, which I thought was cool, because we do that.
Yeah,
we have our own little family whistle back to each other in public, like if we need to find each other or something like that. And they were doing that, and then they're standing at the grave, or Elena's standing at the grave, and she does the whistle, and then there's this inordinately long period of time where you're waiting for something to happen. And I kept, like, the longer we were waiting, the more I was convinced we were going to hear that whistle come back at her, and that we were going to be like, somehow Natasha's still alive.
Some variant or something.
I was sort of disappointed that it was Val.
Well, I
would have been okay if it was like Clint as well, because of how close Natasha and him and recruiting him, and it still would have tied into the Hawkeye show. But go ahead, Sam.
No, I mean, I agree. It was weird. I think Val was the last person anybody would have expected to show up in that. Like, I think you pick any other MCU character and they would be like, yeah, that makes a little bit more sense. But I think it can work. And I think it's cool how they're using the movie to connect the TV shows in a way. It makes this feel like it's more intertwined. You know, one of the problems with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was it didn't feel like it was in the MCU at all.
Well, it isn't. They're basically saying it's a variant timeline.
And the feeling of it just kind of felt like a TV show with Marvel characters, not a TV show set in the Marvel universe. It felt strange, but I totally forgot there was something that came out of the post-credit scene. Kind of implied that they're building the Thunderbolts. Again, thank you, Sam.
Yeah,
I put that in on the notes.
No, that's a big deal.
Credit. It is huge.
Because the Thunderbolts are huge. They're a huge group.
Yeah. What did you think about this, and what do you think this means for the future of the MCU?
Oh, I think it opens up a lot of opportunities. It's a new team group. We don't have, the only team group we have right now is the Avengers. Well, and I guess you got the Guardians of the Galaxy or whatever. But, you know, the Thunderbolts are essentially the MCU's Suicide Squad.
And I'd be disappointed if they if they have a Thunderbolts movie, they better have James Gunn direct it.
Yeah, right. But it's basically this ragtag group of anti-heroes / villains who work to save the world, basically. Sound familiar? But it's usually got Taskmaster, Zemo, Elena, John Walker. There are a few more, but we've got
think about that,
four big players.
Absolutely. And if you stop and think about, and they're organized by Val, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. Kind of. She's the leader.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got Val now organizing this group. We know that. We know that Elena and we know that U.S. Agent are a part of it. Zemo is out there. Mm-hmm. He's moved away from being the big bad guy of Civil War into being sort of this likable, lovable anti-hero.
Right. Mm-hmm.
He could easily become a part of this group. He's actually one of the leaders, I think, from what the original Thunderbolts.
That's what I heard.
He's like the one that organizes it, I think. And then Taskmaster's redeemed to some extent.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
And they're not dead, which I'm sure we'll talk about this later. But yeah, they definitely could bring in Taskmaster.
So it sounds to me like that's what they're doing. I think that's what Val's doing. She's setting up this group.
And it seems like they're setting all these characters up to be more of an anti-hero instead of villains just on a group.
Right.
Because of how...
Who are their big rival in the comics? Do you remember?
I don't remember, no.
I don't either. Okay. Well,
probably Avengers or something. I don't know.
No. They're going after bad guys, but it's like they're bad guys going after bad guys. It's Suicide Squad.
Well, we'll see. But we get the Gorls reuniting with the Crimson Dynamo.
Oh, wait, but also they're called Thunderbolts because of General Ross. That was his nickname.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
And he's the one that's like the head of them. So what if...
Is Val working for Ross?
What if they're putting this squad together to help enforce Sokovia Accords?
Ooh.
And they're going after the Avengers. They're going after the heroes, the ones that won't follow the rules,
like
and
Hawkeye.
all that, like Hawkeye. Like they were going after Natasha already. She's gone. They've got Hawkeye left now. He's one they can go after. But you've got, who else is out there? A Falcon, Winter Soldier, Wanda. Wanda destroyed an entire community.
Right.
She's dangerous. I think that's where they're going.
Yeah, they could probably go.
What was
with
U.S.
that.
Agent's mission that he was put on? Do we know? Did she say
they haven't said
They haven't said it. Right. We just got it cool too. But we get the girls reuniting with the Crimson Dynamo, which isn't his name, but I thought that was kind of a funny thing.
Crimson Dynamo is a character though. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, a Russian superhero. He's like the Russian Iron Man.
Yeah.
In that.
Which I think we're getting in What If I'm not mistaken.
That'd be kind of cool.
There was, we get, Red Guardian just in prison doing a bunch of arm wrestling things while getting tattoos.
When he arm wrestled that dude that questioned him as to whether or not he battled.
I'm getting there.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was a chat about Captain America with that man. And he was talking about how he fought him. And the guy says that that's not possible because of the time frame that it was put in.
Which you don't insert that sequence in there unless there's a reason for it.
Because it was the main focus of that scene.
Right.
So
which then he results in breaking the guy's arm.
Do you think he's telling the truth about his fight with Captain? And if so, how did he fight Captain?
All right, I'm going to go ahead and
I'm giving this to Dad
because I believe that the world thinks that Red Guardian's making up the story of battling Captain America. I don't think that Red Guardian is making up the story. Okay. I think that he believes it. He's convinced of it. He battled somebody that he believes is Captain America.
Fine.
Now,
U.S. agent.
No, because this was in the 80s or the 90s, at least, that very early 90s. Because what the sequence begins, the movie begins at like 93, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So they've been there 3 years. So this is the 80s that he battled. And this is, I think he even said it was in the 80s.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's battling who he believes is Captain America in the 80s. Now, there's two potential candidates out there. And I think one of them I can rule out. Okay. You would think that there's a possibility it could be Isaiah Bradley. Isaiah Bradley is a super soldier. He's Black Captain America is the way that people kind of joked about him or talked about him, that kind of thing.
He was in prison.
But at this point, there was prison. That's exactly right. I don't think it's him. Yes, Cap is a capsicle at this point, but there's the captain from the end of Endgame who goes back to the 50s or whatever, 40s, and dances with Peggy and lives his life out, and he ages more slowly. You get to the 80s, he's still Captain America at this point. And we don't know what Steve Rogers was doing in those decades. Nope. If they needed him, if something happened, Captain America is a good guy. Mm-hmm. I think he battled what is it called? Red Guardian. Red Guardian. I think he battled him. And I think that there's that moment at the end of Endgame where Sam is saying, there's a story that you need to tell or something like that. And he's like, No, I don't think I will.
He was talking about the girl.
Okay, but there's a story. There's like a history
there's definitely
there.
a whole history.
I think that's all.
I'm still lobbying for something though. In some post-credit scene or something, I want to see Red Guardian like challenge old Steve Rogers to a fight, right? And old Steve Rogers still ends up kicking Red Guardian's butt just to show who's the true.
I don't care. Whatever. I just want whatever. I want it to be Steve.
Of course. Yes. Yeah, me too. Then we have this prison break sequence, which was really cool.
That was fun.
And it was a lot of fun. Avalanche and everything. But we get this chat in the helicopter, and Red Guardian doesn't think that what happened with the girls and what he did was wrong.
Yeah, they were both sterilized. They won't get into as much detail as they get into in the helicopter with that. He thinks it's a good thing because it allows them to do their mission.
Exactly.
Right, everything
It's
for
all
him
about
is
the mission.
Yeah,
exactly. And he loves these girls and he loves them as his own, but they were a mission.
He really does, but he's twisted.
He is.
Yeah.
He's twisted. Red Guardian was a funny character.
Absolutely.
I loved him in the movie. I can't wait to see him again because I think that the laugh bits, the gags with him are going to be better the second, third, fourth, kind of like Tommy Boy gets better every time you watch it. It's like a good wine,
movie.
right? I think that his character is going to get better.
Compare Tommy Boy to a good wine.
And Red Guardian.
Wow.
All of that together. But you have to separate yourself from how much fun that character is and realize he's messed up.
He's twisted.
He is.
Yeah.
And so is Marina.
Exactly. Melina.
I keep getting it wrong.
You have problems with Russian names.
Hey, they're hard.
Alexei, Melina, Drakov. Like, come on, we can do this at some point. But we really do get this sense that he's all about the mission, but he does love these girls, and he appreciates them and what they do. And they're trying to get to St. Petersburg to get to the mom, and yet he does the whole thing where he's like, yeah, we'll have enough fuel to be able to get there. And they technically did.
The youngest sibling did such a youngest sibling thing. It's like, okay, I'll do what you said. And it ends up failing anyway.
Crashed down.
I hadn't connected it like that.
It was
so
great. And he was technically right. It only had to walk a little bit to get there, but they kind of made it to St. Petersburg. But
just totaled the helicopter.
We get this conversation after they get off the helicopter. And he's mimicking kind of what Loki said.
Yeah, that
about
was really
your
cool.
ledgers are dripping with blood. Yeah,
he's dripping, gushing red. Like he said the exact same thing.
And yet he's saying it as a positive
He
thing.
gets his arms. He puts his arms
he's
around
like proud
Natasha
of them.
and Elena, and like, I'm so proud of you.
You guys have killed so many people.
That was a funny scene, and again, it's a little twisted, but I love the
twisted.
It's
I
like
love the
how we
character.
liked Zemo in Falcon and Winter Soldier. It's just like
you think Red Guardian goes to the Thunderbolts as well? That'd be kind of cool.
I could totally see that happening too, man.
We're so good, but we get a reunion with the mom. She's basically telling these pigs how to kind of get through maze, which was really cool to see. But we get a family dinner because why not?
It's not awkward
family.
at all.
It wasn't awkward at all, but we get some really funny moments, a lot of fun conversations. Kind of.
Was I the only one who was stressed out about the
I'm
pig?
getting to that. We get these funny conversations. We also get a lot of heartfelt conversations about what it was like and how it actually impacted Natasha and Elena a lot. What did y'all think about the dinner scene? And were either of y'all worried about that pig?
Sam, you were.
Yes,
I mean,
oh my gosh.
I was too. But go ahead.
I was sitting there. I'm like, just move the slider. He's like dying. Give him some air.
Slowly, it's like sitting down. It's like slowly falling, and I'm just like, let the pig breathe.
Yeah, I have no idea what they talked about that entire scene.
Me neither.
I was just stressed
Because I was just like, okay, just slide that thing over, get the iPad, slide it over.
the pig.
Come on, help the pig out.
They're gonna perform CPR.
But what did you think about the whole dinner and how it was tense, but how much that childhood really affected Yelena and Natasha, and it changed about who they came to be, and how Melina and Red Guardian Alexei found it to be okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, neither of the parents thought what they were doing was bad. It was for the mission. They did the mission, they accomplished the mission. It all went fine. They didn't think about what effects that could have to a kid because, to the parents, they're already developed. Being through that circumstances and
they chose to do what they were doing.
Right. The kids didn't know what was happening. They're developing. They don't know what's going on. And that's going to impact them. Thinking that their parents are parents, but really they're just handlers, essentially, is going to mess you up a bit.
And I do think it's interesting to contrast that dinner with the first dinner and the opening sequence, because in that first dinner, that's when Alexei comes back and he's like, we have to go. Mm-hmm. And you can tell neither one of them, none of the family wants to go, like that knows what's going on. They don't want to leave. They want this life to stay the same. But Alexei and Melina, they are able to sort of move past it. And I don't think Natasha and I know Yelena never are able to move past it.
Yeah, and we get this really...
And they experience that. That dinner was... I've been through some awkward family dinners before. That one was one of those awkward family dinners, MCU style.
Exactly.
with it.
We get this really, really cool scene where Red Guardian is singing American Pie to Yelena.
After talking about his dad peeing on his hands.
Exactly. For Frostbite.
Have you guys thought about how that song ties into what happens?
The saga begins
in the beginning.
Yeah, right.
It's the day the music died. There's talking about all these American things in this, and they're leaving America.
Right.
This is the moment that Natasha's life changes forever.
Exactly.
With it, and I think and Yelena too, especially Yelena. And it's her song. It's her favorite song that she sings in the car on the way to escape. So. All of that is going on. That was pretty brilliant. I'm ready to see this again. Can we go tonight?
Same.
No, we can't.
I'd do it.
We sadly cannot. But the mom betrays every one of the other family members, which is really sad. I was actually shocked at that
I was
point.
like, wow, great job,
I was
Mom.
like, wow, you're a great mom.
You not only ruined their lives, but you're going to make it worse
but
again.
they set that betrayal up really well, as she's a cold, calculated person, really about there for the mission. It's about the mission. And at that point, when Red Guardian is singing American Pie, you can tell he starts forgetting about the mission and starts caring about these girls and his family. Because he figures out, I don't have a mission anymore. I'm not Red Guardian, but these people still appreciate me and respect me, and so why not care for them? I really like that.
Yeah.
I can we talk a little bit more about Melina as a character?
Yeah, we can.
I think that of all of the major characters, the four big characters, in this, I think she was my least favorite. I don't think that they did. I don't think that, and it has nothing to do with Rachel Weisz and her acting ability. That hasn't what it is. I don't think they wrote this character very well.
They've had problems. They had a big three. They had Natasha, Yelena, and Red Guardian. Every other character, they didn't feel like they needed to flesh out. Again, I was going to touch on this in a little bit, but it feels like a good spot now. We have Taskmaster. She was underused and underappreciated, it felt like, by the writers, because Taskmaster is such a really cool bad guy. And it kind of felt like they didn't understand the character as it was. And then they do the whole switcheroo with it's the daughter of Drakov that Natasha thought she killed.
Which Loki calls her out for in Avengers Endgame.
Yep.
That was a cool connectivity.
It was a really cool connection, but
again, about Melina, I think that they, going back to her, I think that they wanted her to be that cold, calculating person.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they needed to write her into someone that actually cared about those girls more. I never got the feeling for after Ohio that she cared about those girls. Even in the end stuff when
I started to feel that a little bit more.
The twist.
A little, but they could have had more impact.
I got the feeling that it was just the mission again for her.
Yeah. And the twist with Taskmaster, it being the daughter, it felt weird a lot, especially for some of the people that read the comics, because it's a male in the comics, and that kind of is just like,
that's not a huge
it's not a huge deal, but it feels like they're trying to be like, okay, well, we have to have a twist for who Taskmaster is, so let's do something that'll make everybody shocked. And so it goes to what Batman Hush did with Hush and Riddler. It's like, okay, well, everybody read the comic. Let's try to find a way to give the shock factor. And it didn't work the same way.
Honestly, I would have preferred if Taskmaster was just faceless the whole time.
Exactly.
It never reveals her personality or her person at all. Just constantly this faceless soldier.
And to go with even the twist didn't hit. They didn't build it up enough for it to mean something for Natasha. And so it was a really weird scene. And really
I think that they wanted to tie all of the loose ends of Natasha's story together in this movie, because this was her big swan song.
Right.
With it. And we got Budapest. We got Red Room, right?
We did.
That question needed to be answered from the end of Avengers, that conversation with Loki. And I think that they tied it in. They thought it was going to be cute. I just don't think it worked as well as they wanted it to.
Worked. Yeah. We get the Natasha or Melina in the room with Drakov, and they pull an old switcheroo like Winter Soldier with the masks, and then they go flashbacks and they have a plan, and it felt very kind of just every movie.
Mission Impossible.
Very Mission Impossible. Very Mission Impossible. We get a nice.
I'm not complaining about.
Yeah, we get a nice chat between Drakov and Natasha. They're being cool, but Natasha can't attack Drakov because of pheromones. Smells, which was a little weird. I'm just like, why can't you plug your nose? But then they answered that. I'm
glad they thought about that and explained it.
Just plug your nose. They have to sever the nerve for the nose.
Yeah, that wasn't about the nerve. That was about her humiliating Drakov. Right? Because she baits Drakov into hitting her multiple times, and he can't sever the nose. He cannot hit her hard enough. She's letting him punch her in the face.
Kicks her.
Over and over, kicking her, and it doesn't work. Finally, she's like, I guess you're not strong enough to do this. I'll do it myself. She bashes her own face in. This is all about, this whole sequence is about, for outside, and this, we don't really have like the jurisdiction to speak into this really, but I think we need to acknowledge it. A lot of this movie was about women feeling like they were taking back power from men that were hurting them and abusing them. It starts with sexual trafficking. It deals with, abusive relationships and all of this, sexism and all of that through Drakov, even saying what I mentioned earlier. All of that is tied into that moment. That moment was her taking back control.
Exactly. And we get, she figures out the plan. She figures out what the console is with all the Black Widows. Everything kind of works out. They get off the satellite after, freeing a bunch of the Black Widows. They get on the ground, and Taskmaster is okay because they get the last vial on
and Natasha asks for forgiveness.
Exactly.
And all that. That's where I think they were trying to tie up her story. Again, I just don't think it worked.
Exactly.
Was anybody else of you guys, did either of you early on start to think, is that Drakov's daughter?
No, I honestly didn't care.
No, I did though. I did. It was like telegraphed to me.
Oh,
as soon as we see Drakov's daughter, we don't really see him die and all that. I'm kind of like, what is that, a woman in Taskmaster's suit? And so it threw me off.
They didn't make me care enough, and I would have loved if Taskmaster just stayed masked the whole time and was still Taskmaster. But the movie ends, we kind of get this whole nice sequence where she gets a Quinjet and she goes back to the Avengers to break them out of prison and all that stuff.
Where's Yelena's vest?
Yeah, and it's super sweet. And then the movie ends and we get a post-credit scene.
So that we should try to coordinate where we watch Civil War, go to the theater, watch Black Widow, and then watch Infinity War.
Yeah, I like it. We should
that would take an entire day.
And that's a problem?
Yeah, a little bit. So,
yeah. Well, final thoughts about the movie. I guess we kind of got that throughout the whole thing. We want to go see it again.
I do want to see it again, but right now I'm going to give it like a 6.5 or a 7 out of 10. If I were going to give it a number rating.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably give it a 7.5 or 8. I mean, it was a lot of fun. It was great, but not a lot of impact, I guess.
Exactly. Yes, a 7.5 definitely. It wasn't a bad movie, but it just had no bearing to the bigger MCU story, at least right now, except for the post-credit scene. But that was different from my usual topic, talking a lot about Marvel. Yeah. I miss my DC. But it was a lot of fun. Next week, I'll hopefully be talking about Batman Who Laughs, figuring out that whole situation. But if anything else comes up, I mean, that might be what I talk about. So, Sam?
I don't think they'll do that. So.
Yeah. Well, episode 5 of Loki was actually littered with Easter eggs. We got to see Thanos' not so popular mode of transportation, a certain amphibian friend, and many things that seem to point to a popular theory right now.
And that's coming up after these ads, specifically chosen for you by, and I forgot her name, and I had it all ready to go.
Contessa Valentina Allegra de la Fontaine.
Yeah, she picked them.
Oh,
this
nice.
is Tatooine Sons.
Hey, y'all.
What's up?
I did my Miss Minutes thing.
Hey, y'all. Hey, y'all. We just need to get Meme on here and have her say
we
it.
Do. So we're talking about reviews this week. We got none.
So I guess it wasn't our fault.
Well, no, it's just they took a break and then they got lazy, and so they have to do it again.
So you're going to have to motivate them.
Exactly. Come on, give us
all right,
reviews.
I'm ready.
Get working,
Maybe I insulted them.
Yeah, probably you did insult them. But so it would be fantastic if you could give us some reviews. We're missing our life energy from you guys. Energy. But we're on Podchaser, Tatooine Sons on podchaser.com, and you can actually leave a review on each individual episode and the show itself.
And if you do, we're going to help kids in poverty in your honor. Let's just be transparent here. We're going to help those kids anyway every single month, but we'll do it in your honor.
Exactly.
So help us out.
Exactly.
Let us do that for you. Thanks.
Be on your guard. There are older and fouler things than orcs in the deep places of the world.
All right, then, keep your secrets.
You're coming to us. Yes, as the footsteps of steps.
There are many magic rings in this world, Bilbo Baggins, and none of them should be used lightly.
TVA trays everywhere.
TVA trays?
Yeah, the like food trays from like the food court. Oh my gosh, they were all over the episode. There were like mounds of them. It's like it's like the agents didn't want to like clean up their trash, so they just sat there and pruned it, not realizing it doesn't actually get rid of it.
Wow.
Yeah, well, this episode of Loki really dove into more about what makes a Loki a Loki. I mean, there were 9 of them in this episode. It's kind of inevitable, but we learned a bit more about our new Loki variants and their Nexus events. Kid Loki killed Thor. Boastful Loki killed Iron Man and Captain America and then took the Infinity Stones. Not really. And Alligator Loki ate the wrong neighbor's cat. But classic Loki had the most interesting event. He conjured a projection that was so good it fooled Thanos. He then escaped and lived in hiding for many years until he missed his brother and tried to leave. What do you guys think when you heard this? This Loki had a very similar story to our Loki. What do you think that can mean?
Yeah, it just shows that the Lokis aren't bad, and I think that's what they're setting up in the series. Loki's never been bad. It's just, it's what he felt like his glorious purpose was to be. It was supposed to be causing chaos and mischief, and he thought mischief was evil. And so that's what he was trying to do. And it, in the family aspect, is what got to me, because he missed his brother so much that he had to leave. And it goes back to what Civ said in that time thing. They're destined to be alone. And so much that the TVA stopped classic Loki from ever meeting his brother again, because Lokis are destined to be alone.
Loki is bad. Loki tried to take over the galaxy.
Kid Loki killed Thor.
Kid Loki killed Thor. Loki is bad.
Yes.
Okay. Loki needs lots of help. All right. But I love the idea that the Loki that seems to have lived the longest is the one, that ends up regretting not being with his brother. He goes off and lives by himself for decades, apparently, and then regrets that and wants to live with his brother. And he's super. I mean, you fool Thanos, you're
pretty powerful.
You're pretty powerful.
Yeah.
I think that could play into the future with this character. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's important about it is that all of the Lokis share a similar story. The Lokis themselves may be different, but, you know, he mentioned Thanos, and all the Lokis were like, oh yeah, I know who you're talking about. That's cool. You know, like, everybody shares the same story. So I think that's important. But later on, Kid Loki said that anytime they try and fix themselves, they get pruned, right? Does this mean the Lokis are truly destined to fail, or is this just the TVA trying to enforce this? Could they have been enforcing this because they realized that Loki could take them down?
No, I think that the Loki of the sacred timeline is supposed to be bad and die. Mm-hmm. And they pruned all the Lokis at when they went off of that. Really what was their glorious purpose according to the TVA with that, which we've still got lots of weird questions about TVA that I'm sure we'll have to talk about. But, I think that's what happened with Sylvie, with Lady Loki. I think that she's, even as a little girl, it became very clear that she was going to be good. She wasn't going to be evil. And, they had to prune her because that broke the timeline for them. So,
yeah.
I think that they're just, the TVA is, like Dad said, there's a lot of questions we still have about the TVA, and they have a lot to wrap up in one episode. But I really do think that the TVA is confused, because I think that Loki, because the people that were there the most variants were Loki. I think that Loki is the one that causes them the most trouble, because they cause chaos. And the sacred timeline is all about order.
Well, they talk about in the episode, Loki's survive. That's just
exactly
what they do.
That's what all they do is just survive. And so I think that the TVA is just confused about what Loki is. And I mean, the Nexus events that they cause is just so frequent. And so.
Yeah, and then later on we see Sylvie burn herself to get to the void, and unfortunately Mobius is there to save her.
Yay, Mobius!
Mobius. He wasn't riding a jet ski.
I know.
That would have been cool.
Yeah, but it's cool he's back. I don't think anybody ever thought he was dead with that post-credit scene there. But later we see like another like heartwarming conversation between Sylvie and Loki again. Are y'all still a little creeped out by this, or...
I got more and more used to it over the periods of time.
If you could suspend the reality that they are the exact same person in a different timeline.
Well, I think that whole sequence in the beginning where the Lokis were talking about their Nexus events kind of helps show that Sylvie's different. All of them had, they knew about Thanos and all this stuff. None of them have seen a female version of Loki, right? I think that's just solidifying that Sylvie is much more different than any of the other variants we have. So she's not quite the same person, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Nate, what do you think?
I said I've just gotten more used to it over the episodes. So
yeah. Eventually, the Lokis, decide to make a plan to take down Alioth, the Voids. It's basically their Roomba / guard dog.
No, he's a big deal in this.
Oh, no, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Kid Loki heads off to do his own thing, and he's totally showing up as a young Avenger. But before Mobius takes a time door back to burn down the TVA, he shares a hug with Loki. I don't know about you guys, but this moment had way more emotional impact on me than any of the Sylvie Loki stuff. This is a real connection that Loki made, one where he didn't try to eventually backstab the other person. He made a real friend. What were your guys' thoughts?
And I think the beautiful part about it was Loki initiates that hug.
Yeah.
And it looks to come from a very sincere point. He's not doing it to manipulate Mobius. He's got nothing from it.
Mm-hmm. No, he's like considered for a second, shaking his hand. He's like, "This may be the last time I see this person. I need to."
Yeah. I that's why I love Mobius as a character. I love the dynamic between Loki and Mobius. And I mean, the one person that Loki wanted to tell about when he figured out that they're all variants was Mobius. He felt like he needed to know because he respected him and they were friends.
They were friends.
And so it was a good scene. I really loved how Loki kind of felt like he was important enough to be able to say goodbye in a sincere way. And
I love Mobius whispering in his ear, hint, wink, wink, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You were always my favorite. When he's looking and making eye contact with Lady Loki, with Sylvie. And it seems to be he's actually indicating that she's his favorite.
Right.
With that was fun.
Yeah. Finally, Sylvie and Loki go to confront Alioth to enchant it, but they can't seem to get the attention away from Sylvie until classic Loki shows up and conjures an entire Asgard. I don't know about you guys, but like this was such a cool scene to me.
It was awesome.
Also, Richard E. Grant. I mean, I think he fits the old Loki absolutely perfectly. What were your guys' thoughts when you saw like Asgard showing up?
I was surprised. I don't know why he chose Asgard of all places, but I thought it was really a really cool scene. I loved how powerful it made Loki's be able to seem. I mean, all we've seen is few, clones, projections, and a couple enchanted here and there, but not whole cities, whole kingdoms conjured to the point where a space cloud dog thing is able to think that it's real.
Yeah.
It was a really awesome scene.
He became so cool that he made that horrible comic accurate Loki costume look cool.
Awesome
with it. I do think his experience has made him the most powerful of the Lokis.
Exactly.
With that. And I there's a history that we've seen with Loki of him faking his own death. I don't think that classic Loki's done. I don't think you bring in Richard E. Grant for 2 episodes.
No.
Good point.
He is not dead.
Not for him to
even
do such an amazing character. So.
But we saw his all messed up helmet and stuff.
Yeah, but you didn't see any of the rest of him.
This is the way he
goes. And the people on the ship, I mean, they had charred bodies. So
true. All right. Eventually, Loki and Sylvie enchant Alioth and open a door to the place past the void. We see some sort of castle floating in space. Let the speculation begin. Who's in the castle? Where is the castle? Nate, you had a pretty interesting point as to who could be what could be behind the castle there.
It looks a lot like the sacred timeline.
As on the horizon there?
Yeah, on the horizon.
I thought it was a horizon line, but
it looks a lot like it because the horizon line doesn't match there. It's just floating. The horizon lines don't float. And it would make sense because it has to deal with time and who created the TVA. And
then when you watch that propaganda video that Miss Minutes has, the timeline looks very similar.
Exactly.
The challenge, I think, is why is are we gonna go there and say that we think that this could be Kang?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the main thing right now.
Okay. Why is he there? And why is Alioth guarding it? Is Alioth keeping other people out? Or is Alioth also keeping him in?
I think a little bit of both.
With that. And could what happens in this episode and the next episode opening up that gateway now because they've taken out Alioth, right? Now, is that what releases Kang to start wreaking havoc throughout the timelines now?
And Quantumania he's the main bad guy. We've already gotten that confirmed.
I mean, what better way to keep a time villain in prison than keeping him outside of time?
Exactly.
Right. So the TVA could be something that was created in order to create a mythology around trying to keep Kang under control.
Not created by Kang himself.
Not created by Kang himself.
I like that.
And Kang is now going to be, freed up to go.
You think he's kind of the Thanos of this next phase?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's what it seems like.
No way he's anything about that.
All right. And lastly, I just want to fire off real quick some of the many Easter eggs that were all throughout this episode. First, we had I don't know how you pronounce this. Kang. It's
Nathaniel. It's
Nathan Richards.
Nathan Richards, which is
it was a
he becomes
Kang. Used. Well, yes, but at the time it was Kang using an alias to buy Stark Industries from Stark.
So Kang is pretending to be Nathaniel Richards or using an alias?
No, Kang and Nathaniel Richards are the same person. He was Kang at this point. He was just using an alias to get the
all right, I think I got it, but just in case I didn't know, all I know is that Nathaniel Richards is the grandson of Reed Richards.
Could be, or it could be the grandfather, since it's out. He's like, time made it weird. He could be an ancient ancestor,
so it doesn't make sense.
Descendant,
but he's Kang, and we see that the Stark Tower in the Void is actually that tower.
Yes.
Okay. That's all I wanted to say.
And then there's Alioth itself is a pretty big callback to some of the stuff in the comics. In the comics, he's less of this guard dog, and he's more of honestly like a rival to Kang.
Right. Which at the end, that ties into what I just said about him being
yeah, that's a really good connection there. He's there to keep Kang under control. Another thing was Yellow Jacket's head. I don't know if y'all noticed that. That was kind of
I didn't notice it.
The first thing I thought of, I'm like, what is this from an alternate timeline where the villains won?
It's rumored that he's going to be back in Ant-Man and Wasp Quantumania.
They could totally do it.
They could.
There's a Thanos copter.
I have no idea what that is, but it's the coolest thing ever.
It was in a comic.
I saw it, but
it was in a comic. Thanos had a yellow helicopter with the word Thanos striped on the back, and he rode around in it for some reason because 80s comics were weird.
Was that Jack Kirby's idea?
I don't know, but it did not play well. So I think it was cool they brought that in. There was Mjolnir.
Yeah, I mean, how do you get Mjolnir there? I don't understand.
I don't know if some Thor went off the beaten path.
Is Sylvie going to be proven worthy and grab Mjolnir?
No. No.
Okay.
There was Throg.
You got Throg.
Yeah.
I got Throg right as I saw him. I'm like, that's Throg.
That's so cool.
This is cool.
I loved how he was trying to jump for Mjolnir.
Right. And then this was kind of funny. It was like Polybus. It was a game.
It's Polybus.
Yeah, Polybus, this game cabinet. It's an urban legend. Basically,
this game doesn't exist.
Well, yeah, nobody thinks it exists, but it was like this game cabinet that whenever you played it, it would like hypnotize you or something. And it was
it's an
weird.
urban legend. It's the Mandela effect. It's that kind of stuff.
Mandela effect's weird.
Yeah.
It might exist though. You never know. And then there was the President Loki and the bearded Loki. President Loki's from the comics.
Can we just talk about that scene where they kept betraying each other? Because that's
Did you
what
see the
Loki's
Star Wars
doing.
Easter egg?
Loki's. There was a Star Wars Easter egg?
There was?
He cuts off President Loki's right arm.
Okay.
Close.
I think that's more.
That is so Star Wars.
I think that's more of a Dark World reference when he fakes cutting off Thor's arm.
You guys are
remember?
so wrong. That was a Star Wars reference.
Okay.
It was the producers of the movie said it.
Okay. Then there was Ronan's ship, which
There was
neat.
That was awesome.
And then there was one more thing. You see this statue with like three faces. One of them's covered up. This is a reference to the Living Tribunal, which is from the comics. The Living Tribunal was basically did what the MCU or what the TVA does, but it's
maybe the Living
person.
Tribunal is the ones that put Kang in that prison.
Maybe.
Right. And set up the TVA, which I think the Living Tribunal actually has three faces and there's three timekeepers. So I don't know. Maybe there's a connection there, but.
Well, the tribunal generally does.
Right. So.
Is it like the judge robot thing from
yes,
Transformers?
but with only three faces.
Okay.
So there's a lot of things it seems like they're pointing towards Kang, but there's, I think it was,
can't wait for this episode.
Screen Rant pointed this out. Not one show so far has brought in a new big baddie. We all thought it was Mephisto in WandaVision. Turns out it was just Agatha all along. Falcon and Winter Soldier, it was Carter, and that was the big deal there.
John Walker.
No, I think that you don't put Kang, you don't put those types of things out there, and then I mean,
you think they're really going to bring in Kang?
It would be the Quicksilver thing times 10, and I think that would be a mistake.
You were convinced for Mephisto, though.
Yeah, I was.
So I don't know. I think we need to take everything with a grain of salt right now.
Exactly.
Okay, all right. Well, next week is the series finale of this pretty trippy yet, I would say, phenomenal MCU series. And I'm just so excited for this last episode. Hopefully we get at least a couple of our questions answered. But one thing is for sure, you cannot miss this next episode. So make sure to tune in next Wednesday.
Yeah. Awesome. This week's episode of The Bad Batch felt a whole lot more like a prequel to Star Wars Rebels. And while we have zero complaints about that, Star Wars fandom isn't reacting too well to it.
Are we surprised?
But that's coming up after these ads specifically chosen for you by the guy in Lucasfilm Story Group who decided to mess with everyone who knows that Senator Orange Frita has to survive this week's show or he's going to be messing up Star Wars canon. This is Tatooine Sons. Hey guys, we know the show's going real long, but that doesn't mean that we aren't going to talk about this. One child is out there for you. There is a child really right now that's waiting for you to sponsor them, to help them on a monthly basis for just $39 a month, where you can provide food, medicine, education, social development, and the most important thing that you can provide for them, which is hope. Please go into the show notes, look at what One Child is all about. And if you can spare $1.30 per day, you can change a child's life. Check it out.
Wokey religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster at your side, kid.
Rebellions are built on hope.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
If you live long enough, you see the same eyes in different people.
Disappointed if this turned into a prequel to Star Wars Rebels, or sort of the prequel.
What, Bad Batch? Heck no. Nope. Go all the way. Go for it.
No, but this show is about Bad Batch.
No, we're good. We're good if we get
be
Rebels.
careful about that.
All right. Well, this looks like it's going to be an interesting conversation, an interesting segment. What were your initial thoughts on the episode? Overall, Bad Batch, Devil's Deal. Go, Nate.
Fantastic. Best episode of this series yet. No, but I honestly do think that. I don't know why. I don't have anything against the Bad Batch, but seeing anything Rebels just excites me to the point of, if we get more of it, I'm completely okay with it, and I honestly would prefer it over what we're getting now.
Oh my goodness.
I'm just saying, I've been wanting something Rebels for so long, and I was so disappointed to hear the Bad Batch was coming. Because
so just having this episode
just having some kind of nuggets of Dave Filoni Rebels was fantastic.
No, I liked it. I thought it was good, and it was interesting to see Hera and Chopper and that whole storyline. But as much as I love Rebels, this is Bad Batch, okay? And it needs to stay Bad Batch. Do I mind what they did with this episode? No, I think it's great. But I don't think they can continue that trend. And I don't think they will. But I understand some people's gripes with it just because it's not what they were expecting.
We'll get to that. I liked the episode a lot. I loved the episode, and I understand the concerns. I was thrilled with it.
Me too. I understand.
I was thrilled to see that character, which I'm trying to hold my because I know what the segment's map is here, but the outline. But I loved that character. I loved the fact when we showed up on Ryloth, then I was the whole time like, are we seriously getting what I think we're getting, and we did. And so I was super excited about it. Having said that, I do understand where some people are coming back.
I do too.
And then there's some criticisms that they're lobbing out there that I don't have any patience for, but I'll talk about that as well. So we talked about it. We start off on Ryloth. Now this is a Republic ally in the Clone Wars that turns enemy of the Galactic Empire. Now it's interesting because last week was a Republic enemy. It was the seat of the Confederacy of Independent Systems that turns to an ally of the Galactic Republic. It was flipped. Sam, why do you think that the Bad Batch is sort of turning the tables on the Clone Wars?
Well, it's to show that why everything that happens in the original trilogy happens, why the Empire is so bad. On the surface, sure, the Empire sounds great. It's what they've been fighting for. That's what the whole Civil War was about. And then it was great. But then they realized that it's not what they were fighting for, and it's really bad. So they're showing how it doesn't matter what your sides were before the war. There's this new enemy that needs to be fought.
Yeah. Nate, what was Cham Syndulla hoping for when he sold out the Free Ryloth cause for the promise of peace with the Empire?
I think he was just hoping for no war. I mean, the Twi'leks have always been associated with war. And I mean, even in Legends and everything, not like the Legends EU, like the Legends in the canon universe, everybody finds the Twi'leks to be just warriors. And so I think he was just hoping for the chance that he could raise his daughter in a world of peace. And I think that he was too naive to see that that's not possible with the Empire.
Yeah, I think the mistake that Cham has here is he mistakes the absence of conflict for peace. Mm-hmm. And that's not what he got from this. He thinks if we no longer have to fight this war, everything is good. But the reality is we trade something. He traded freedom
for peace,
for security.
Yep.
With that. And that is a big problem, right? I mean, you guys don't remember this period of time, but going back to 9/11, right? Everybody was so afraid of Islamic terrorism that we sacrificed. I was as guilty of it. I was, waving my flag and everything else with this. We sacrificed, our privacy and our freedom of privacy through things like through different, actions that took place to where, and again, this isn't a political show, but the reality is we have to be really careful about what we're giving up in order to get something. And it's, Ronald Reagan, one of the greatest presidents from my perspective. You don't have to agree with me on that, but, well, these two have to agree with me. But anyway, Ronald Reagan, once said, be careful of anybody that says, I'm with the government, I'm here to help you. And that's exactly what
that sounds horrible.
What Cham Syndulla experienced in this. There was a couple of Twi'leks, in this episode who are not quite, the way that they were portrayed. They were, 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 ready to surrender their arms to the Empire, as much as Cham was, in this. You have Gobi, Glee, and Cham's daughter, which, we've seen her a little bit, before.
Just a tad.
Her name, if you're unsure of who she is Hera Syndulla.
Yeah.
For goodness sake. Nate, on a scale of 1 to 10, what was your shock level when Hera appeared on screen?
I don't know if I can put it in numbers. I was so happy to see something from Rebels. I mean, I just got the same feeling as what I did when I saw Kanan again. It was so amazing, and I just want more of this.
Yeah, it was awesome. Sam, we already saw it, like you just mentioned, BB Nate, a young Kanan Jarrus in the first episode of the series. The joke has been that the Bad Batch is season 8 of the Clone Wars. Do you think the Bad Batch has I mean, we were kind of criticizing it a little bit as a joke at the beginning, but do you think it has a chance of really becoming a prelude to Rebels now that it's transitioning?
Well, maybe. I think they've brought in Hera and Kanan and showed them as kids. You can't really bring anyone else in because, well, maybe Zed, but that would just be, I don't know how they would do that.
You can bring in Callus.
Maybe, but I think what they can do to make it more of a prelude is to show more of the starts of the rebellion movement. We've already seen a little bit of. Have we seen a little bit of Bail?
No, we haven't.
I haven't seen any Bail yet.
Uh-huh.
Well, anyway, they can use this to start showing the starts of the rebellion movement, which we're seeing. That's what this episode was about. Mm-hmm. So they can use it to bring in that whole storyline, which leads up to Rebels.
Yeah. Nate, is Star Wars 2 reliant on existing characters and worlds?
No. I think that the fact is...
Because that's a criticism of
It is, and I get it, but sometimes Star Wars fans, if they put a nobody in and have really no connections to the larger story, like High Republic, people can be a little frustrated that it has no bearing to the other story and that these are just nobodies. I guess we need to find a good middle
the Goldilocks
of it, which I feel like this worked perfectly. Not many people have seen Rebels. Not as many people that have seen Clone Wars have seen Rebels.
You got to be careful about that. Sam, you talked about this. We got the Bad Batch for about 2 minutes in this episode.
Yeah,
this show's called The Bad Batch.
Yeah, it was like, here's some guns, and then they left.
And I think that's true if you separate off Crosshair from this. But do you think that this episode shows that the Bad Batch is really, it's not about just Omega and those 4, Hunter, Wrecker, Tech, Echo, but it's also about Crosshair and that this whole team, because he was in this episode a lot more than we've seen him.
But there was no character development with him. He just seems to be okay, healed up for the most part from his
they didn't explain
injury,
that at all either.
And that's it. Like, there was nothing more with him. They didn't show, like, maybe this internal struggle or him turning even more evil. Yeah. Like, it was just Crosshair.
Okay. What are some takeaways from this episode? What do you think we go from here?
I don't really know. It didn't feel like they even wrapped up the story in this episode.
Yeah.
It feels like they leave it open for another one, which... I wouldn't mind seeing it, but I can understand the people that would be frustrated of not seeing more Bad Batch, which it goes back to what the Clone Wars was, and it had a lot of these type of arcs. It had arcs that didn't deal with clones, that didn't deal with Jedi, the droids arc, and that was frowned upon. But I mean, you had other ones as well that didn't really deal with clones or Jedi, but it dealt with what it was like in the Clone Wars. Okay. And I feel like this deals with what it's like in the transition from the Clone Wars to the Galactic Empire.
Right, because this series is exploring a time we haven't seen before, and they have to show what's going on outside.
And I also feel like this is kind of Dave Filoni's little message saying, I haven't forgotten about Rebels.
It was a great message. Thank you, Dave. With that, what are some takeaways from you, Sam?
Yeah, I think the key takeaways here are the galaxy's uneasy right now, and there's stuff happening. There's fights happening outside of the Bad Batch right now. And it's important to keep that in mind.
Yeah. I think my biggest key takeaway from this one is that our favorite Twi'lek pilot is in terrible danger. Hera has been captured. She's imprisoned. I think we can hope that the Bad Batch will come to save the day in the next episode. I think that's how they tied. I think that the best way for this episode to be viewed is in light of, and of course, we could be completely wrong what happens in the next episode. We could be back eating Mantel mix and, doing some other job for Sid. But if the Bad Batch is brought in to this episode, or into the storyline in the next episode to help rescue her, then I think that the whole episode, the hour-long story,
it'd be more of a part 1, part 2.
It makes a lot more sense. I think we can be certain that Crosshair, if they do that, Crosshair isn't going to make it easy for them. All right. Anything else you guys want to talk about?
Anything else?
Yeah, the Marvel What If trailer was released, and it's looking good.
It was so fun.
Looking so good.
It looks really good.
I know. I was excited about that one. What about you?
Yeah. So a Batman The Long Halloween reunion comic, kind of just like a follow-up comic about from the Long Halloween universe, and the storyline is coming back
with the original,
with Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale helming the ship with this comic. That's really exciting. It's going to be a 50 or so page comic, $8 coming out later this year in the fall, which
maybe it won't be as boring as
probably around Halloween.
Would Pastor Stewart at church said that
not finish that
long Halloween part 1 was.
It wasn't boring. You didn't understand it. Okay.
Star Wars Visions, we talked about it last week, but the introduction was both fascinating and a little weird. With that, so that was a lot of fun. Thanks for listening to Tatooine Sons of Pop Culture podcast.
Yeah, if you had a good time listening, please share this with your friends. Hey, everybody.
Yeah.
And of course, the show is only a small part of the Tatooine Sons world, so be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and advocate for Tatooine Sons, fight against Camoine Sons.
Yeah, for sure. Don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast app so that you don't miss our next episode. Remember that if you drop us a review on Podchaser, link in the show notes, we'll make a donation in your honor to one child to help a child living in extreme poverty. And then make sure you join us next week. We're going to give our full reaction to the finale of Loki. That will be our glorious purpose next week. We'll also see what happens to Harrison Dooley in the Bad Batch. I hope. And BB Nate's, unless some crazy thing happens, we're gonna get some more of the Batman Who Laughs, right?
Yes.
All right, awesome. Anything else you guys like to say?
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you always.
This party's over.
I like that Wookiee.
Don't get technical with me.
Joy, please.